Let's welcome Omar Badar. He's the Deputy Director of the Arab American Institute. And Omar, first of all, what did you make of the meeting today?
Well, frankly, I thought it was a bit cringeworthy. I mean, Trump just spoke in such vague terms, terms that really express a level of lack of seriousness in resolving this issue, lack of interest in knowing any of the details. So I really did not think that there was much to feel optimistic about really coming out of it.
In other words, his oversimplification, his saying that, well, this might be a far more simple deal than people understand, his seeming to not understand the depth of the distrust on both sides?
You know, in a sense, it is a bit of a simple deal in that we know what would actually resolve the conflict, an end of the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories, end to the settlement enterprise, a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. We know what that formula would look like. The only issue is that no U.S. administration has been willing to put the needed pressure to achieve that outcome. But it just, you know, listen to what he said lastly, the segment, the clip that you just played, where he talks about how the U.S. is not going to impose any resolution and that the parties have to figure this out for themselves. I mean, this really shows a lack of sophistication and understanding of how this conflict works, because there's such a very significant power imbalance between the parties, and leaving them to figure this out on their own means the status quo, means Israel gets to impose its will and the Palestinians have to simply endure whatever Israel hands out to them, and that's not a way to actually resolve the conflict. You need international leadership, you need U.S. leadership to put the needed pressure on Israel to end the occupation, and that's how the resolution, that's how the conflict
But Omar, aren't there some things that have to happen before that? I mean, as you just pointed out, the reality is that Israel is in a far better position geographically in terms of the military and everything else. That don't the Palestinians need to make at least some concessions to get on that path, like, for example, as the president asked, making sure that money no longer goes from the Palestinian Authority to the families of people who carry out terror attacks?
No, I think it's a misunderstanding of the driving force of this conflict. Look, there is incitement that happens, and it frankly happens on both sides, and it gets a lot less coverage when it happens on the Israeli side. But ultimately, incitement is merely a symptom of the conflict. Whenever you have a protracted injustice, hate is a natural outcome of that. What we really need is a resolution to the injustice, and that's the political injustice that's taking place on the ground. And since the late 80s, we've known that that has been the illegal occupation, which the Palestinian leadership, the entire Arab League, and pretty much the UN votes on it every year, talking about a two-state solution by which Israel would end the occupation of the Palestinian territories. That is absolutely step one. You know, if you think about apartheid in South Africa, there was plenty of racial hatred, but everybody understood that step one was ending the apartheid system, the political injustice, and then you work on reconciliation.
But Omar, in South Africa, there was also
conflict as well.
In South Africa, there was also recognition that the government, that South Africa had a right to exist. Isn't it reasonable for Israelis to expect, and Hamas hasn't even gone that far, but isn't it reasonable to expect that a clear enunciation that Israel has a right to exist and that this can be taught in Palestinian schools, for example?
The Palestinians have accepted Israel's existence again since the late 80s. That's the entire basis for the peace process that launched in 1993. Palestinians did recognize Israel and conceded 78% of historic Palestine to the state of Israel. And the idea was that Israel was going to reciprocate and accept the existence of a Palestinian state in 22% of historic Palestine, namely the occupied territories. So the problem is that right now, with the continued building of settlements, Israeli settlements in the Palestinian territories, the rejection really is from Israel, a rejection of a Palestinian state, of Palestinian independence and self-determination. And the fact that Israel is actively on the ground dismantling Palestinian society, and we're talking about what specific form of Palestinian recognition of Israel must come before peace can move forward, I think is a bit having the issue a bit backwards.
Omar Badar from the Arab American Institute. Omar, a lot of people may disagree with you, but your voice is always welcome on this channel. We appreciate you coming on tonight. Now, a look beyond